wildfires. The California mutual aid system is working as it's designed. CAL FIRE is doing an extraordinary job. We're getting support from out of state. We're very blessed to have had the support of previous legislatures as well as this current legislature to advance an historic amount of funding to effort and aid our efforts to prevent as well as mitigate the spread of these fires. What we're experiencing this year is simply without precedent, and no legislative session could address the 14,000 lightning strikes that we experienced over the last few weeks. No legislative session can foundationally address the conditions this heat wave has produced in terms of the heat dome and the impact that's had, as well as the Santa Ana and Diablo winds. And so at the moment, that's not under consideration. But again, when it comes to any legislative session, I am open to that conversation as long as the legislative leadership is aligned and we have a purpose beyond any consideration.
Now, you spent today talking about a lot of the assistance for small businesses, including tax credits and tax deferrals. Eventually, the bill will come due for all this, whether it's for tax credits, it's kind of sapping state revenue. Tax deferrals will eventually have to be paid. How well equipped is a state to deal with the loss of revenue, and how well equipped do you think small businesses are to pay this tax liability?
Well, you want to create revenue, you want to create jobs. If you want to create jobs, you can't be anti-business. And so the whole point of this effort is to stimulate economic recovery, which stimulates revenue, which stimulates virtuous cycle of tax support. And so the idea is not very complicated. We balanced our budget last year with consideration of all of our priorities in this state. The $125 million we put in the iBank was part of our budget. We were able to balance a $54.3 billion budget shortfall last year, and we found the money for this program as it relates to those small business loans. We found the money for many different programs to support small businesses. We felt it was a necessity with this additional $100 million request based upon the sluggishness of this recovery to provide an additional $100 million of support. It didn't in any way significantly impact our projections in terms of shortfalls next year. And I think the sooner we get people working again, the sooner we get people back to work, which is the intention of all of these programs, the revenue will more than offset the investment that we're making in those supports.
I have a question from Raj Vora of the Jagrati newspapers in India. I guess you have a worldwide audience on these briefings. He wants to know if you'll consider releasing 4 national inmates in state prisons to their home countries for safety concerns and cost concerns. And on top of that, there's been some immigrant rights advocates in the state that have criticized your administration for releasing inmates in the prisons for COVID reasons and other reasons and handing them over to ICE. Can you explain why that's being done?
It's been done historically. It's been past precedent of previous administrations. We maintain it as the appropriate course for our administration. We've been clear on that for over now 18, 19 months. As it relates to the specifics around individual prisoners, that's done on a case-by-case basis. It goes through a very exhaustive process and protocol. We have formal protocol through our parole board. We have other protocols on commutations and pardons that are separate and above from that go through a process within the executive branch with concurrence from other advisors that the administration has put into place. We've made many commutations and pardons over the course of the last number of years, consistent with the previous administration, and we continue to work to address the issue of concerns of COVID in our CDCR system. 1,457, maybe 1,459 individuals currently tested positive in our prison system. We monitor that on a daily basis. Right now, Folsom and Avenal prisons remain top of our mind in terms of focus. We're down to 11 cases at San Quentin. We made real progress in that space. And again, trying to decompress that system, look at vulnerable patients, or rather vulnerable prisoners, many that are patients in the mental health facilities as well as in our hospital facilities within CDCR, and look at the issue of this virus and look at compassionate releases in that space that are lower risk. And so all of that is part and parcel of our approach and our strategies, well-defined, well-established particularly over the course of the last 7-8 years under the Brown administration, extending through my administration.
There's been a lot of stories and a lot of things written about the stress that parents and students are under with the distance learning programs underway, and I'm just curious about your level of concern about what potential cost that may have with all the screen time kids are now have on their laptops and all the other devices. If that's if something is gonna have to be done later on to address all that and some of the impacts it had on them both physically and mentally. And second, I'd like to find out how active have you been with your children who are also doing distance learning? I mean, are you helping them every day, trying to navigate that, do homework online? I know you're obviously the governor and very busy, so how much have you been able to help them?
Well, I've got 4 kids, so I'm not intellectualizing this question. It's a conversation not just having with my wife, not just a conversation I'm having daily with my 4 children. It's a conversation we have with other parents, friends, family members that are struggling with the same. There's a reason we put $5.3 billion up in this year's budget, and that was to address the issue of learning loss and provided flexibility for our school districts to address the concerns around the issues of distance learning and learning loss, particularly for low-income communities that don't have access to the tools of technology or download speeds or even any broadband whatsoever, and the impact that that learning loss will have on them more permanently. We also are looking at the issue of wellness, and not just physical, but mental wellness, mental health as it relates to same supports, and providing flexibility with those dollars to provide additional additional capacity for those districts to support parents. And so this is a very trying and challenging moment in the history of this country, for that matter, the history of the world. The overwhelming majority of countries are expressing similar concerns. Same time, our default is this: we must make our schools safe. That means we must keep people healthy, not just our kids, but paraprofessionals, our teachers. We put out very prescriptive protocols going back in July about what that looks like. Worked in partnership with CDE, worked in partnership with the Superintendent of Public Instruction, worked in partnership with 1,000+ districts in this state to get their feedback and advice and counsel. We want to get kids back in school for the social-emotional part of learning experience, but we need to do so in a safe manner. The good news is, as the positivity rates continue to decline, the likelihood that we are closer to reopening our schools in a safe manner, because the background infection rates are beginning to stabilize, presents itself. And so we hope this is a temporary frame, and it should be, because we want our kids back in school to address the issues related to the question and address the issue of anxiety that I face as a parent and that other parents face every single day as it relates to particularly our younger kids that have a very difficult time on these learning devices. I have a daughter in particular lasts only a few minutes every morning before she gets up and runs away from that screen, only to spend the next 20, 30 minutes to coax her back in front of that screen. Older kids are faring a little bit better than the younger kids, and so that's an experience I imagine replicated by millions of parents across the board. Certainly the case in my household, and it's the case households all across this nation, not just the state. And so the most important thing we can do is mitigate the spread of this virus, continue to take seriously these non-pharmaceutical interventions around wearing face coverings, and to try to avoid these large mixing events, which are just simply irresponsible, where people are not following the rules, that request a permit but don't abide by the commitments they make, and put other people's lives at risk, and increase the likelihood that not only that we see a spread of the virus, but a delay in getting people back to school, and a delay, if I may, in getting people back to work. There's simply nothing more important in this state and in this nation, if we care about getting our kids back in school and care about getting the economy moving again, than addressing the spread of this virus. And there's nothing more potent and powerful we can do than simply wearing face coverings and practicing common sense and physical distancing and avoiding mixing in large crowds. If we commit as a nation to do that, if we commit as a state of doing that, we will move much more expeditiously to advance the collective cause of educating our kids in the way they should be educated and creating the economic conditions where states like California can not just survive this pandemic, but thrive coming out of this pandemic.
In November, California voters will decide whether to restore affirmative action in California. And you've been in California long enough to kind of witness firsthand the evolution of this issue over the past 3 decades. Where do you stand on it now, and do you support this initiative?
Yeah, I came out formally for that initiative 2 weeks ago. I've long been an advocate for reform in this space, going back many, many years. Was vocal on the campaign trail. No one should be surprised by the support of this initiative. I was very heartened that the legislature was able to move this forward, very gratified by it. And I know firsthand, not only through my personal experiences as relates to the work I've done in public service over the course of decades, but the work that I had the privilege of doing as a member of the UC Board of Regents and the CSU Board of Trustees, to see the impact that affirmative action coming out of 1995 has done, particularly the black students, and decline in the total number of black students enrolled. I think this is a significant initiative, and I hope and encourage others to support this cause in November.
Do you think there are any drawbacks to the initiative or
There's
restoring
always
affirmative
consequences and unintended. I think the drawback of the status quo is self-evident, and it's exampled by data, statistics. It's exampled by opportunity lost. And so I think overwhelmingly the jury is back, and in this case we have the opportunity in November to right the wrong of 1995. So with that, I want to just thank everybody for their time and attention, and again, just want to thank all the businessmen and women out there that are struggling. I just want to express deep respect and empathy for everything you're going through and all the struggles that we face moving forward. I want you to know that the state is trying to do more for you than we've done in the past, but I also recognize, final words, that we have a lot more to do to support your efforts to recover and to address the deep anxiety you have about prospects of your ability to continue to operate in this state. And so just know that we look forward to many new announcements supporting our small businesses over the course of not just the next months, but many weeks. And I can assure you, having worked over the last few weeks on next year's budget, that we will prioritize, yet again, our small business community and make a commitment that builds on the work that we've done to date in effort to help stimulate and support your growth in this state. And so with that, let me thank everybody for their time and attention. I look forward to catching up very, very soon.